Hi, this is Mike Hendrickson from Strata and Hadoop World in Europe. I'm here in London with Rod Smith from IBM.
That's correct.
Rod, how you doing?
Good, good.
So you're with the Emerging Technology Group at IBM.
That's correct.
Can you unpack that a little bit? Because I know emerging technology is usually on the forefront of things. What do you guys actually do in your...
Well, people can think about us as kind of a headlights group in IBM, and we're not part of a product team. And what we work on is really what customers talk to us about is kind of their future needs. And many times customers aren't data scientists or IT, they're business people. So they tell us stories. We try to unpack those stories and say, well, gee, are there technologies coming through innovation and open source and other places that might change the economics for them, might solve that problem they have? And sometimes we're 3, 4, 5 years ahead in looking at these. And I've got two teams. So we look at it from a technology standpoint, what can we build that we can help the customer with? But we don't build it all the way. We build it kind of in a cookie dough form. So we can go back to the customer, kind of as a communication vehicle, and engage the customer, saying, did we understand you right? Because sometimes there's not a lot of language that you can refer to, and they give us feedback right away, and then we do POCs. So my services group on my nickel will go out and work with the customer and say, let's do back of an envelope how you do it today. Let's see if this has the right economics for you. And since, again, we're not a product group, they give us great feedback. If it didn't work, they are comfortable. It's kind of risk mitigation for them. If it does work, they'll give us feedback and guidance on what we should do next.
So this is kind of like almost a lean or agile approach to
Absolutely.
Evolving technology for your partners.
Yes.
And you get practical input from them.
Yes, we get very practical input, and it's usually the customers we work with know IBM's products and Microsoft, so they're not interested in what's on the truck. They're saying, here's what hurts my head. And we look for those patterns. It's usually not one customer that says that. Usually, we'll see, it's like, well, now what do we do? What can we, what looks like might change that for them?
So IBM is such a big company, and you have groups all over everywhere. Do they all feed into you? Do you feed into them? Or is it a mutual?
We feed into them, and part of our job is to be an on-ramp. So while we get the fun things to do, maybe, and we find something that's going to be, a really disruptive approach, we have to engage with the product teams and give them lots of heads up of what we think is coming down the pike. And those POCs I talked about, those are good customer references. They're ways that build our currency, so we can go talk to the product teams and say, this is where these things are going. So it's not just us as smart guys, that's not worth much. Us talking to customers, now we've got kind of a two-pronged approach with this. And then if the market starts to talk about this area, then we got a nice stool to sit on at that point.
Excellent. So do you also use data internally at IBM in your group to figure out what are the hot things or what are the emerging things that you're going after?
We do, and we do. We've been using data. My team started with Hadoop almost the same time that Cloudera got started, working with customers. And many times it's data that we've had that we work with customers. Sometimes it's the customer's data, sometimes it's social data on this. So we have a culture, kind of a competency around data and analytics, natural language processing in particular. My team worked on a lot of that in the early days that we then gave to open source and other places with it. So yes, we're very flexible about using data and leveraging data. My team, I measure everything too, so I'd like to know how things are going and metrics and how we can improve ourselves in doing this too.
So speaking of NLP, does your group also work with Watson and the Watson different implementations that could happen? And because there's so many things Watson could do.
Well, it's interesting. We, after Jeopardy was done, the executives said, Rod, your team's close to the group, and you've got the big data skills and the analytics skills and the platform skills. You take the code from research and you harden it for the Watson division. So we had a lot of fun working with research, and a lot of that was that we knew how to work with big data, we knew natural language processing technology, we knew analytics, the ensemble approach with UEMA that they used, all worked in our favor of doing this. And of course, we have to clean up the code as well. So, wouldn't expect research to do that. And so we did that, and then, 14 months later, handed it over to the Watson division, and then worked on MD Anderson and some areas around cancer, helping them on that. And that's the fun part for us. It's when you get the technology to point and you go talk to oncologists, and they start to tell you really personal, things they don't have in their software today or they can't do. That's strongly motivating to go back and work on better interfaces and better technology.
Yeah, so always finding the best reference examples
Yes.
are great, and especially if they change people's lives. So how do you guys determine what technologies you want to go after and that are going to make a difference in the world? Because, we can all chase after, clicks and making a button happen, or, making someone purchase, something they don't need. That's not important. But how do you guys decide what's important?
Well, it's always interesting when we're into a project. Customers, we're very quick. We're not a large team, about 100 people. And we do projects very quickly. And customers, when you kind of are working at their pace of, thinking about new things they want to do, they talk a lot. They like to, dialogue. And so, typically when we're starting a project, they'll say, well, can you do this other thing? And typically what I'll say is, well, tell me the business problem. Tell me what you're frustrated about or what you're trying to do with it. In Hadoop days, it was interesting that we had customers that would say, can't get my IT department to do this types of analytics on Hadoop. We would show them you could do it in, say, 20 minutes. But a flag came up for me when a customer would say, well, if you can do it in 20 minutes, can you do it in like 20 seconds? And I'd say, well, what business problem? But it stuck with me. There's something there, and then it takes a while when you start talking to customers. In those cases, what I found is until they see the art of the possible, they really don't know how it changes their business processes, which then makes not just us but others, you're worried about starting with the wrong technology. 20-second, we could do that, but it'd probably take a much larger Hadoop cluster, and the economics work at that point. But that stayed with me, and so we're careful of listening to the customer. And my team is always very good about writing down exactly what the customer said. Don't try to decipher it yourself. Let us all just kind of look at the walls and look at the board, and then we'll kind of build up a better understanding, look to see what technologies might be coming around the corner, and then we'll start to work on those.
So it sounds like you're a requirements group where you listen and find the requirements of the market as well as
we do. We do both things. Requirements is too strong. It's a discovery process, and we're doing real-time analytics now. We're working around Spark, and we started with Hadoop and building solutions for line of business, but we kept hearing they wanted something a little bit more, but it took about maybe 2 years before they could start to talk about it, and I could get it through my thick skull that they didn't know how it fit in until they could see it. So, we had to learn what it meant to do that and kind of flip the equation on that from a technology standpoint.
And what's next on your radar? Because, being in front of all this technology and having feedback from all your partners, what's next on your radar that you think is going to be a big thing for everyone?
I'm going to talk part about it tomorrow. I think Spark sets the stage for where we want to go for kind of a real-time business transformations. Customers don't want to wait like they do today, 3 to 6 months sometimes for analytics to come back to answer a repeatable question. They're in discovery mode. They want to, a little like we saw from Shazam, they learn what's going on, and then they can build new products with that. But I think the trick is now we're moving towards the power user. We seem to go through the Excel days and Office and things like Power Builder for client server, and then we metered over into commerce and portals. But I think we're going back to that kind of power user where they need tools, new applications to be able to explore data very fast, real-time data, historical data, to come up with new products, new services that they want.
So democratizing, in a way, data and decisions.
And democratizing analytics. As I said before, sometimes you could work with somebody. I think one area right now is iPi notebooks. If you look 2 years ago, it was just getting started. Today on GitHub, I think there's over 70,000. Well, that is interesting. And now, you're seeing how that's a very interactive web approach, collaborative approach that businesses want the data scientists and the solution developers sit right at the table with them. So that, for us, changes things. You can't be a developer and just talk code, and you can't be a scientist and just talk logarithmic regression analysis. You have to put it in business terms. So how do we think about, on our team right now, looking at kind of next generation notebooks, next generation interactive web applications that the business people can drive without having to worry about IT or others in the process.
Excellent. Well, you guys are doing amazing stuff. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with next. Seems like you have the job that's like the perfect job. Emerging technologies in a large company like IBM that can go in all different avenues. So if there's one thing that you could change in the world with technology, what would it be?
Well, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think that especially when I'm thinking about analytics nowadays, I think that I'm a little bit surprised maybe that folks are so put off by using it. I think it's so valuable in everything that we do. And we talked, I see healthcare studies, and immediately my head kind of pops and says, well, I bet you they didn't add these other things in. And so probably my passion is, how do we, as we go through this democratization, how do we empower more folks to be able to solve problems and be able to bring those results forward for all of us? And so lowering the barriers for me to new applications that embed analytics is what I'd like to see more of.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to seeing that unfold in the future.
Thank you. We appreciate it.